I struggled to open my eyes as the first rays of sunlight broke through the curtains. My 74 years reminded me every morning, first with a dull ache in my joints, then with a crunch in my knees as I lowered my legs from the bed. Elizabeth always said I creaked like an old barn door we'd torn down back in the 90s. Now there was no one to say that. My house in Renton, the one I'd built with my own hands, had gotten too big since Elizabeth left. 3 years had passed and I still caught myself talking to her, especially in the mornings. "Liz, have you seen my glasses?" I asked yesterday, standing in the middle of the living room, only to realize I was doing it again. I strolled into the bathroom, scrutinizing my face in the mirror. Ivan Bullock, a former civil engineer, was now just an old man with wrinkles that seemed to tell the story of every building I had erected. My hands, once strong and confident, now trembled as I shaved. But my mind, it remained as sharp as the blade of that very loom. After breakfast, oatmeal with raisins as always, I sat in a chair by the window. I had a view of the driveway and the house across the street. It was an old habit to observe. Elizabeth used to call it my vice. "Ivan, you're not a building inspector to study the neighbor's fences like that." And I always replied that observation was exactly what kept a lot of bridges in this state from collapsing. The phone rang at 9 sharp. Leighton, my son, called every Thursday at the same time. No earlier, no later. It was like he put a reminder on his calendar. "Call the old man." Surname. "Hey, Dad, how are you?" His voice sounded strained, as it always did lately. "Still alive," I replied. It was our standard joke, though we'd both stopped laughing at it about 5 years ago. "Tess and I were thinking of stopping by on Sunday, if that's okay." Tess, my sister-in-law, the woman who came into Leighton's life the year after Elizabeth died. I remember the first time they met, she brought a pie she claimed to have baked herself. I immediately noticed the branded sticker on the bottom of the mold that she'd forgotten to remove. A small thing, but I remembered. "Sure, come on over," I said, though I wanted to add, "just without her." Leighton was 40 and still searching for himself. After his divorce from his first wife, Helen, it was as if he'd lost his core, an engineering degree like mine, but he never liked construction. He jumped from place to place, from IT consultant to public relations specialist in some corporation. Now I was working remotely as a data analyst. I didn't really know what that meant, but I could see that he didn't enjoy it much. My relationship with Leighton had always been complicated. I wanted him to follow in my footsteps, and he resisted. Elizabeth was always there between us, softening, explaining, reconciling. Without her, we interacted like two strangers forced to maintain the semblance of family. Sunday came sooner than I expected. Their dark blue sedan pulled up to the house at noon sharp. Leighton got out first, waving to me standing on the porch. Tess floated out of the car, flawless as always, brown hair styled, makeup perfect, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Suckin'. Ivan, you look better than you did last time," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume, too pungent for my taste. "You still have a knack for dubious compliments, Tess," I replied, making Leighton chuckle nervously. We walked into the house. Tess went straight to the kitchen, opening the cabinets in her own way. She always did that, like she was trying the house on for herself. I noticed her eyes lingering on Elizabeth's antique clock on the mantelpiece. "It's a beautiful clock," she said, running her finger over the woodwork. "It must be worth a fortune." "It's not for sale," I cut her off. "Dad, no one's talking about selling," Leighton interjected. "Tess was just complimenting me." I didn't say anything. Tess smiled that smile of hers that never affected her eyes and walked to the kitchen, where she began unloading the groceries she'd brought. I knew she didn't know how to cook. In past times, they'd always brought food from the restaurant. "How's your work going?" I asked Leighton when we were alone in the living room. "It's okay," he shrugged. "There's a project with a big client, lots of data to analyze." "Sounds interesting," I lied. We both knew I didn't understand it, and he wasn't interested. The clinking of dishes came from the kitchen. Tess was humming something, falsely, I could tell. "Leighton, help me find the big dish," she called out. When he came out, I noticed Tess opening the drawer where Elizabeth kept the family photo albums. She flipped through one of them quickly, like she was looking for something specific. And then when she saw Leighton coming back, she slammed it shut and smiled. At lunch, Tess talked more than anyone else. About her new position at a real estate company, about her vacation plans, about friends I'd never met. I ate in silence watching her. 35 years old, marketing degree, ambitious. What did she see in my son, who had always avoided competition and preferred stability to risk? Ivan, she suddenly turned to me. Leighton and I have been thinking about the future. This house is too big for you alone. Maybe we should consider a nursing home. There are great places with care, entertainment. I almost choked on a piece of chicken. Tess, Leighton pulled her back. We had a deal. What? I'm just looking out for your father, she patted his arm. At his age, it's dangerous to live alone. What if he falls? What if he forgets to turn off the gas? Anurm, I'm not that infirm yet, I said, trying to hold back my irritation. And I'm not going to leave the house I built with my own hands. Of course, Ivan, Tess smiled. But think about it. The house could be sold for good money. The neighborhood's appreciating. The lot's big. Tess, stop it, Leighton looked embarrassed. I'm just saying you have to plan ahead, she shrugged. Sopran, Leighton was too delicate to bring it up. After lunch, Tess volunteered to do the dishes, and Leighton and I went out to the backyard. The old apple tree we planted when he was 5 was still bearing fruit, though not as abundantly. Sorry about Tess, he said, looking past me. She's just worried. She's worried about my house. I didn't soften. About how much it's worth. Dad, don't start that again. You're always like this. First with Mom, then with Helen, now with Tess. I'm always what? I raised my voice. Am I telling the truth? Your mom was a saintly woman. Helen was a good girl. You just weren't right for each other. And this one. I nodded toward the house. Her name is Tess, and she's my wife. Leighton clenched his fists. Why can't you just accept my choice for once? We stood across from each other like two strangers. I saw Elizabeth's features in him, the same eyes, the same tilt of his head when he was angry. But the temper, stubborn but malleable, too easily influenced, that was its own curse. I want the best for you, I said more quietly. I always have. Then stop judging every decision I make, he replied. Tess loves me. She supports me. I didn't say anything. It was useless to argue. Leighton saw what he wanted to see. When we got back to the house, Tess was standing by the dresser in the living room, looking at a picture of Elizabeth. Your mom was a beautiful woman, she said to Leighton. I wish I'd had the chance to meet her. Yeah, Mom was special, he replied with sadness in his voice. You know, Tess continued, turning to me. I found some papers in the kitchen cabinet. Old insurance policies, I think. Maybe we should get them renewed. I might be able to help. I know an agent. I'll take care of it, I said. And I don't know why you have to go through my closets. I wasn't. I was just looking for sugar. She laughed, but it sounded fake. You're so suspicious, Ivan. They left around 5. Tess kissed the air near my cheek again in farewell and said she'd be sure to send information about lovely homes for the elderly. Leighton gave me an awkward hug, as always. I stood on the porch, watching their car disappear around the corner. An uneasiness grew inside me that I couldn't quite pinpoint. Something about Tess had been nagging me since day one. Maybe it was the way she looked at the house appraisingly, as if estimating its value, or how quickly she had entered Leighton's life after Elizabeth's death, when he'd been particularly vulnerable. Back in the house, I made my way to the kitchen and opened the cabinet where the papers were kept. It wasn't as I'd left it. Folders lay in a different order. Some papers were displaced. I looked through the contents, the insurance on the house, the will Elizabeth and I had made years ago, where everything went to Leighton. The thought of Tess taking an interest in my finances made me cold. But what could I tell Leighton? That his wife was going through my files? He'd just brush it off. Say I was paranoid, that I saw a threat where none existed. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night. I kept thinking about bits and pieces of the conversation, about Tess's glances, about her interest in Elizabeth's watch, in the insurance, in the value of the house. Something was wrong here, and I could feel it with my whole being. But Leighton was blind, or didn't want to see. I got out of bed and walked to the window. The full moon lit up the backyard, the old apple tree, the bench where Elizabeth and I liked to sit on summer evenings. I missed her now, her advice, her understanding, her quiet wisdom. What am I going to do, Liz? I whispered into the darkness. How do I protect our boy? There was no answer. Only the silence of the night house and the growing worry in me for my son, who seemed trapped by a woman with cold eyes and a fake smile. It's been a week since Leighton and Tess's visit. Their talk about nursing homes and the value of my real estate kept me on my toes. I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was lurking behind Tess's mask of concern. Elizabeth had always said I had a flair for people, and in my 74 years, I'd learned to trust that flair. Thursday, as usual, Leighton called. His voice sounded strained. "Dad, Tess found some senior residences for you. Very nice places, with medical care." "I'm not going to move," I answered sharper than I intended. "Suctionunanum. No one's forcing you to," he sounded annoyed. "Just think about it. At your age, living alone—" "At my age," I interrupted, "it's up to me to decide where I want to live. I built this house, and this is where I'm staying." There was a long pause. "Okay, whatever you say," Leighton said at last. "By the way, Tess and I are thinking of taking a loan to develop her business. She wants to open her own real estate agency." "And what does that have to do with me?" I asked, although I already knew where he was going. "We need a guarantor. The bank asks for additional guarantees." "Here it is." I felt a wave of anger rising inside me. "A guarantor? You want me to vouch for Tess's business?" "Dad, this is a good opportunity for us. Tess knows real estate. She has experience." "She has experience?" I couldn't keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "What kind of experience? Wasn't she in marketing or sales?" Her story changes every time I hear it. "She retrained." Leighton's voice became defensive. "Took courses, got her license." "How much do you want to charge?" He said an amount that took my breath away, almost the value of my house. "Are you crazy? That much for a startup business? Tess knows what she's doing. She has a business plan." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not going to bail her out. This is crazy, Leighton." "I knew it!" He was almost yelling now. "You're always like this, never supporting me, never believing that I can do this." "It's not about you," I tried to explain. "It's Tess. I don't trust her." "You know what? Forget it. We'll find another way." And he hung up. I sat in the chair, clutching the phone, and felt my heart pounding in my chest. Something was wrong here. Tess had been too insistent in trying to get to my money and possessions. First the talk of selling the house, now the loan with a guarantor. What's next? I decided it was time to take action. The next day I called my old buddy Perry Williston, an ex-cop. We had met when I was building a house for his sister and had kept in touch ever since. Perry was 5 years younger than me, but long since retired. "Perry, I need your help," I said without preamble when he picked up the phone. "Can you run a trace on one person?" "Who this time, you paranoid old man?" He grinned. "My sister-in-law, Tess Grimshaw, now Bullock. 35 years old, works in real estate, or marketing, or something." I told him about my suspicions, about Tess's persistent attempts to get me to sell the house, about the loan. "Sounds suspicious," Perry agreed. "Give me a couple days and I'll see what I can find out." Perry called back 3 days later. His voice sounded worried. "Ivan, your sister-in-law is a dark horse. Real name is Tessa Greenwood. Changed her name to Grimshaw 6 years ago. Before that, she was married to one Roger Carmichael, an elderly drugstore owner. He died in strange circumstances, leaving her a decent fortune. Relatives tried to contest the will, claiming she had manipulated it, but it didn't work out. Then she disappeared for a couple years, reappeared with a new name, worked all sorts of jobs, never lasted long anywhere." I listened, feeling the cold creeping into my bones. "There's something else," Perry continued. "She was in trouble with the law. Petty fraud, the charges were dropped, and she was on a financial fraud case with a company, but they couldn't prove her involvement." "Thanks, Perry," I said, digesting the information. "You have no idea how important this is." "I do," he said seriously. "Be careful, Ivan. If your suspicions are correct, this woman is dangerous." After that conversation, I decided that I had to see for myself what Tess was doing. I started following her, as much as I could for a 74-year-old man. Bought a prepaid cell phone so Leighton wouldn't know I was calling. Took a few cab rides into town and watched the office building where Tess supposedly worked. One day I got lucky. I saw her leaving the building in the company of a man. tall in an expensive suit. They got into his car and drove off. I couldn't follow them, but I managed to take a picture of them with my phone. The man didn't look like a business partner. Too intimate, he held her by the waist as he helped her into the car. The next day, I drove to the office again, and plucking up my courage, went inside. Identifying myself as a potential client, I asked the receptionist about Tess Bullock. The woman behind the counter frowned. Tess Bullock? We don't have an employee by that name. Tess Grimshaw, perhaps? I tried, remembering her maiden name. No, sorry, the receptionist shook her head. Are you sure you've come to the right address? I apologized and walked out, feeling the pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together. Tess had lied to Leighton about her job. What else was she hiding? That same night, I took a desperate step. I knew Leighton and Tess were away for the weekend. He'd mentioned some kind of conference in Seattle. Using the spare key Leighton had given me, just in case, I broke into their house. It was wrong, illegal, but I had to find proof. Their house was spotless. Too spotless, like a set in a magazine. Not a single personal photograph. Not a single detail that spoke of real life. I started in the study, cautiously going through the papers on the desk. Nothing special. Invoices, some catalogs. Then I peeked into the bedroom and noticed a locked drawer in the nightstand at Tess's side. I had a small screwdriver with me, an old builder's habit of always having tools with me. The lock was simple, and after a few minutes the drawer opened. Inside was a file folder and a small jewelry box. In the box was jewelry, expensive by the looks of it, and several pictures of men. One of them was the one I'd seen Tess with outside the office. On the back of the photo was the caption, "To my darling Tess, always yours, H." In the folder I found documents in Tessa Greenwood's name, her marriage certificate to Roger Carmichael, his death certificate, a copy of his will, and something else, a certificate from the clinic about Roger Carmichael's mental state, dated a month before his death. It said he was in the early stages of dementia and cognitive decline. With shaky hands, I took pictures of all the documents on my phone. I knew I had to leave before I was caught. As I was about to close the drawer, my phone rang. It was Leighton. Dad?" His voice sounded weird. "Where are you?" "At home, of course," I lied, trying to sound calm. "Really? Then why did the alarm go off in our house? Security called me." My heart skipped a beat. "An alarm system? I didn't know it was set." "I have no idea what you're talking about." I continued to deny it. "The cameras went off too, Dad." I could hear the disappointment in Leighton's voice. "I can see you right now, in our bedroom." I looked up and noticed the tiny camera in the corner of the room. How could I have been so careless? "Leighton, I'll explain," I started, but he interrupted me. "No, Dad, this is too much. You're breaking into our house? Going through our stuff? What's going on with you?" "You don't understand. I was trying to get my head together. Tess is not who she says she is. She's—" "Stop it," he screamed. "I don't want to hear your paranoid theories. Get out of our house right now and give back the key. You're out of line." The line broke. I stood in the middle of someone else's bedroom, caught red-handed, feeling both guilty and betrayed. But I knew I was right about Tess. I had proof now. I hurriedly left the house, hailing a cab. All the way home, I went over the documents I'd found in my head, trying to piece it all together. Tessa Greenwood, a.k.a. Tess Grimshaw, a.k.a. Tess Bullock. The woman who married an elderly man with onset dementia and inherited his fortune after a strange death. A woman who had lied about her job, about her past. And now she was married to my son, trying to gain control of my home and property. History was repeating itself, and I had to stop it. At home, I immediately rushed through the photos I'd managed to take. They confirmed my worst fears. Tess was a money hunter, and now my family was her target. But how do I convince Leighton of that? Especially now that I'd completely undermined his trust by breaking into their house? I decided to call Perry and tell him about my findings. He listened intently and whistled. "You're in trouble, man, but you're right about her. It's a classic scheme. Find a vulnerable man, marry him, get access to money and property, and then disappear, or worse." "What do I do?" I asked, feeling helpless for the first time in years. "Lie low for now. I'll try to find out more about this Carmichael's death. and you don't make any sudden movements. If she's dangerous, as I think she is, it's best to proceed with caution. I agreed, but inside I was seething with powerlessness. My son was in danger, and there was nothing I could do because he didn't believe me. The next day, Leighton came to pick up the key. He looked tired and angry. We stood on the porch, avoiding looking each other in the eye. "How could you, Dad?" He finally spoke up. "Breaking into our house, going through our stuff?" "I'm worried about you," I replied. "Tess isn't who she says she is." "You're doing it again?" He raised his voice. "You just can't accept that I'm happy with another woman after Helen." "That's not the point." I tried to remain calm. "I have proof. Her real name is Tessa Greenwood. She was married to an elderly man who died in strange circumstances, leaving her a fortune. She's lying about her work." "Enough!" He raised his hand, stopping me. "I don't want to hear this nonsense. Tess told me about her past, about her first husband, about the problems with his family. Everything you're saying is a twisted version of the truth. You twist the facts to fit your paranoia." "Leighton, please." I took a step toward him, but he backed away. "Just verify what I'm saying. Call the company where she supposedly works. Ask her about Roger Carmichael, about the reference from the clinic." "I know about Roger," he interrupted. "Sure. Tess said you'd be digging. She warned me. She was afraid you'd find a way to ruin our marriage. And here you are. You're doing it. She's manipulating you." I felt despair squeeze my throat, just like she'd manipulated Roger. "Give me the key." He held out his hand. "And please don't call me until you're ready to apologize to Tess." I took the key out of my pocket and put it in his palm. Our fingers touched, so different hands, but with the same lines in the skin, the same curve of the thumb. Father and son. "Be careful," I said quietly. "Just be careful." Leighton didn't say anything back. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing on the porch of the house I'd built for the family that was now falling apart. I went back inside and sat in a chair, looking at Elizabeth's picture. What would she do in my shoes? She was always wiser than me, always finding the right words. "I'm losing him, Liz," I whispered. "I'm losing our boy." But I knew I wasn't giving up. Even if Leighton didn't want to listen to me, I had to find a way to protect him. Because I could feel it. Tess had just started her game, and the stakes were too high. It had been 2 weeks since Leighton and I had fought. 2 weeks of silence, punctuated only by calls from Perry, who continued to gather information about Tess. He'd learned that the police were indeed investigating Roger Carmichael's death, but that there wasn't enough evidence to press charges. Strange coincidences, suspicious circumstances, but nothing concrete. My house, once filled with life and laughter, now seemed like a crypt. I went from room to room, going through old photographs, remembering the times when Leighton was a child, when Elizabeth was alive, when we were a family. Sometimes I felt like I was going crazy with silence and anxiety. On Thursday, when Leighton usually called, the phone was silent. I couldn't stand it and dialed his number myself, but he didn't answer. I left a message, short, discreet. "It's me. Just wanted to see how you were doing. Call me when you can." There was no reply. On Friday, I decided to take a walk to the store. My old pickup had been in need of repair for a long time, and I preferred to walk when the weather permitted. Renton was a small town, and it was only a leisurely 15-minute walk to the nearest supermarket. It was one of those fall days when the sun is deceptively bright, but the air is already permeated with cold. I walked slowly, leaning on my cane, not so much out of necessity as out of caution. My knees aren't what they used to be, especially in wet weather. As I turned the corner, I saw a familiar car, Leighton and Tess's dark blue sedan, parked outside Margie's Cafe. My heart skipped a beat. They're in town and didn't tell me? My first impulse was to go in and talk, but something stopped me. Maybe intuition, maybe years of working on construction sites where one wrong move could cost a life. I slowed down and moved closer, trying to remain inconspicuous. Through the window of the cafe, I saw Tess sitting at a far table. She was alone. Leighton wasn't around. Tess was talking on the phone, gesturing vigorously. Her face, usually reserved in my presence, was now animated, almost predatory. I couldn't hear the conversation, but something in her expression made me wary. I walked around the cafe and found myself near the service entrance. next to the open kitchen window. Tess was sitting just a few feet away from me, separated only by a thin wall. I could hear her voice now, clear, cold, not at all like the honeyed tone she'd used in my presence. "Another month, 2 at the most," she said. "Manny, the old man is stubborn, but his son is in my pocket. He'll believe anything I say." A pause, the person she was talking to answered something. "No, the house is worth at least 500,000, plus insurance, plus other assets. Yes, I've already prepared the ground. Talked about the nursing home. He refuses, of course, but it doesn't matter." Pause again. "Divorce?" She laughed, and it sent a chill down my spine. "I told you when we met. I'd be divorced soon, and I'd have it all. This marriage was just a means to an end. Leighton's an idiot, just like his father. He believes I love him." More laughter, sharp as shards of ice. "What's going to happen to him? It doesn't matter. Not my problem." I felt the ground slipping from under my feet. My ears were ringing. Elizabeth always said that I turned pale when I was really angry. All the colors drained from my face and gathered somewhere inside, turning into cold rage. That's exactly what I was now. Pale and full of rage. Tess kept talking, but I couldn't make out the words. The only thought pulsing in my head was that she was using my son, planning to take everything we had and abandon him. And I was right all along, but no one wanted to listen to me. I forced myself away from the window and moved away from the cafe, trying not to attract attention. My hands were shaking, my breathing hitched. I needed to pull myself together. I needed to warn Leighton, but how? He didn't believe me, ignored my calls, thought I was paranoid. The supermarket was forgotten. I walked home, going over my options. I could go to the police, but what would I tell them? That I overheard a private conversation in which a woman was talking about divorce? That's not a crime. I had no recording, no proof, just my word against hers. And Leighton would probably side with her. First thing I did at home was call Perry. "She's up to something," I said without even saying hello. I heard her talking. "She's planning to divorce Leighton and take all our money." "Calm down, Ivan." Perry's voice sounded tired. "Just tell me the whole story." I told him what I'd overheard. Perry was silent for a long time, and then he sighed. "It's bad, man. Very bad. But like I said, we don't have much against her. Her first husband died of a heart attack, officially natural causes. Psychiatric diagnoses can be challenged or explained in a number of ways. And an overheard conversation isn't even circumstantial evidence in the legal sense. "But my son is in danger!" I was almost screaming. "She was talking about him as a tool. She's using him." "I understand that, but we need more. We need facts, documents, records, something that will stand up in court." I slumped back in my chair, feeling my strength draining away. Perry was right, but there might not be time to gather evidence. Tess had talked about a month, 2 at the most. What was she planning to do in that time? "Listen," Perry said after a pause, "there's something else you need to know." I found another person from Tess's past. There was another older man before Carmichael, one Hubert Foster. She wasn't married to him, but she lived with him. He died too, leaving her a decent sum. And you know what's interesting? The symptoms before he died were very similar to Carmichael's. Headaches, confusion, coordination problems. "She was poisoning them," I whispered, feeling my insides grow cold. "Maybe," Perry said cautiously, "but it's almost impossible to prove. Both bodies were cremated, as the will said." "And Leighton?" I asked. "He's not an old man. He doesn't have a fortune. Why would she poison him?" "Insurance?" "Shummery," Perry suggested. "You said she was interested in your insurance policies. Or it could be a longer game. First she marries him off, then she convinces you to rewrite the house, the assets, and then—" He didn't finish, but we both realized what he meant. I remembered Tess's interest in the house, the insurance, the will. It was all adding up to a scary picture. "What should I do?" I asked, feeling cornered. "Right now? Warn your son, if he doesn't believe you." "Well, we'll think of something else." We said our goodbyes, and I immediately dialed Leighton's number. It went straight to voicemail. I left a short message. "Call me back. It's urgent. It's vital." All day I tried to reach my son. Sent messages, left voice memos, nothing. Toward evening, I was ready to drive to his house, but Perry talked me out of it. If Tess is there, you'll only make it worse. I stayed up all night. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about Leighton, about Tess, about her words in the cafe. I'm going to get divorced soon and have it all. What if divorce wasn't the worst thing she had planned? What if our lives really are in danger? In the morning, unable to bear it, I took a cab to Leighton's house. The house seemed empty, curtains drawn, no car. I knocked, no answer. The neighbor, an older woman walking her dog, said she'd seen Leighton leave early that morning, alone, without Tess. I got home and started calling again. This time, to my amazement, Leighton answered. "What do you want?" His voice sounded tired and irritated. "I need to talk to you, in person. It's very important." "I'm busy, Dad. I don't have time for your conspiracy theories about Tess." "It's not about theories," I tried to say calmly. "I heard her, Leighton, with my own ears. She was talking about divorcing you soon and taking everything." Silence on the phone. "Did you follow her?" he finally asked. "No, I just happened to see her in the cafe. She was on the phone, calling you an idiot, saying you were just a tool." "And I'm supposed to believe that?" There was a hint of anger in his voice. "You broke into our house, went through our things, and now you're telling me you overheard a conversation that confirms all your suspicions? How convenient." "Leighton, I swear on your mother's life, I'm not lying." My voice trembled. "Tess is dangerous. Perry found information about her past. Before Roger Carmichael, there was another man, Hubert Foster. He too died under strange circumstances, leaving her money. She... That's enough," Leighton shouted. "Stop lying." "Tess told me about Hubert. He was her uncle, not her lover. He left her a small inheritance because she took care of him in his last years." "It's all lies. You conspired with Perry to smear my wife." I didn't know what to say. Tess had everything covered, even the Hubert Foster story. "Leighton, please." I felt tears coming to my eyes. "You have to believe me. She's not who she says she is. She's after our money, our house." "Not my house, but our house?" he interrupted. "What's next, Dad? Are you going to say she's trying to poison us? That she's a witch? That she's a..." And then it hit me. The only way to make him believe me was to let him hear what Tess was saying. "Leighton," I said firmly, interrupting his tirade, "we sell the house and we leave. Now." "What?" he stammered. "What are you talking about?" "My house. I want to sell it. Immediately. And get out of here. With you." "But you always said you'd never sell the house." The bewilderment in his voice was genuine. "I've changed my mind. The house is too big for me alone. And I want us to start over, you and me, without Tess." He was silent longer now. "Dad, are you okay? It's not like you." "I've never been more serious. We sell the house, we take the money, and we leave. The sooner the better." "But why? What's going on?" "Come here and I'll explain everything," I said. "Just don't tell Tess. It's important. Not a word about our conversation." "You're starting to scare me," he sounded worried. "Good. You should be scared. But not of me." I hung up, knowing that now he would either think I was completely crazy and never speak to me again, or he would be interested enough to come over. I prayed for the latter to happen. To my relief, an hour later, Leighton called again. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said briefly and disconnected. I spent that time gathering everything I had on Tess. Photos of documents, notes taken after my conversations with Perry, my observations. I knew it wasn't enough to convince him completely, but it was a start. Leighton arrived exactly 20 minutes later. He looked tired, with shadows under his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. We sat down in the living room, and I started talking, trying to be as specific as possible and avoiding emotional evaluations. "Tess isn't who she says she is," I said. "Her real name is Tessa Greenwood. She was married to an elderly pharmacist, Roger Carmichael, who died in strange circumstances, leaving her a fortune. Before that, there was Hubert Foster, not an uncle, but an elderly lover who also died, leaving her money." I showed him the photographs of the documents I had managed to take at their house. Leighton looked at them in disbelief. "These can be forged," he said. "It could," I agreed. "But why would I do that? I want to protect you, not ruin your life." I told him about the conversation I'd overheard yesterday. I repeated Tess's words as accurately as I could. With each word, Leighton's face grew more and more tense. That, it doesn't sound like her, he said, but there was no longer the same confidence in his voice. Remember, I said softly, from the beginning, she was interested in the house, the insurance, the money. She lied about her job. I checked. No one at the company she named knows her. She insisted I be a guarantor on the loan you supposedly wanted to take out. Leighton was silent, digesting the information. Sinam, I could be wrong, I said. I hope I'm wrong. But what if I'm right? What if she really does plan to hurt you? You and me. For the money. What are you suggesting? He asked after a long pause. Check it out. Set a trap. I'll tell her I'm going to sell the house and sign the money over to you. See how she reacts. How's that going to help? She might just be happy for us. Or she might reveal her true intentions if she feels the money slipping through her fingers. We worked on the plan for hours. We decided that I would call Tess and tell her I wanted to reconcile, that I was willing to sell the house and support them financially. Leighton will listen in on speakerphone. If she reacts normally like a caring wife and daughter-in-law, maybe I really was wrong. If not, as we dialed Tess's number, my hands shook. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Leighton sat next to me, tense as a string. One ring, two, three. Ivan? Tess's voice sounded surprised. Is something wrong? Tess, I wanted to apologize, I began, trying to make my voice sound sincere. I've been unfair to you. You care about Leighton, and I appreciate that. Oh, she was quiet for a second. This is unexpected. Thank you. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about the nursing home, about selling the house. You're right, it's too big for me alone. Really? She sounded interested. Have you changed your mind? Yes, I looked at Leighton, who was listening with bated breath. I've decided to sell the house. I'm putting the money into Leighton's account. You can use it as you see fit. Maybe for that business you wanted to start? Ivan, that's, wonderful. Her voice became sweeter than honey. I knew you'd come to the right decision. When do you plan to sell? As soon as possible. Already talked to the agent. He thinks it'll go fast. Tess, you have real estate experience, right? Maybe you could help me with the paperwork? Sure, she was practically purring. I'll organize it. I know a great notary who can help with the remortgaging. Leighton looked at the phone with an expression I couldn't quite pinpoint, a mixture of shock and disbelief. There's something else, I continued. I want you to help me update my will. I haven't done it since Elizabeth's death, and I realize now that it was irresponsible. Of course, Ivan. She could barely contain her excitement now. I'll arrange it. It's a very wise decision. We talked some more about the details, and I hung up. Leighton sat motionless, staring at one point. Do you still think I'm wrong? I asked quietly. Yeah, I don't know. He shook his head. It could have been a coincidence. She was just glad you stopped being so stubborn. Leighton? I put my hand on his shoulder. She didn't even ask where I was going to move to. She didn't ask about my plans. She was only interested in the money and the will. He was silent, but I could see that my words had accomplished their purpose. Doubt had been sown. Now we had to act quickly before Tess realized it was a trap. I suggest you move in with me for a few days, I said. Don't tell her you talked to me. Just say you're on a business trip or something. We can gather more information during that time. Verify everything I've told you. Leighton looked at me for a long moment, like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I'll stay for a couple days, but I'm still not sure you're right. And you don't have to be, I smiled weakly. Just be careful and keep your eyes open. When he went home to pack, I called Perry and told him about our conversation with Tess, about Leighton's reaction. You took the first step, Perry said. Now the key is not to scare her off too soon and gather evidence that will convince not only your son, but the police as well. I'm willing to sell the house, I said firmly. If it'll save Leighton, I'll sell everything I own. Point one on. Let's not rush into selling just yet, Perry advised. Let's get all the facts first. Then we'll decide what to do next. I agreed, but inside I knew I'd do anything. Sell the house, move away, start over, just to keep my son away from a woman who saw him only as a means to an end. A woman who talked about divorce and getting everything, as if it were not about lives, but about casino chips. The next few days flew by like a blur. Leighton moved in with me temporarily, telling Tess that he had an important project that required full concentration and needed quiet. She seemed to believe it, especially after my call about selling the house. She even offered to help with the paperwork and finding a realtor. The first thing Leighton and I did was go to a lawyer. Not the one who had handled my cases for years and knew Tess, but a new one, a young woman named Brenda Everett who Perry had recommended. She specialized in family law and property disputes. Brenda's office was located in downtown Renton, in a small room on the third floor. No ostentatious luxury, simple furniture, racks of legal literature, plants on the windowsills. Brenda herself, a thin blonde woman of 35, met us in an austere suit and with a penetrating gaze that seemed to see through people. "So," she said as we settled into the chairs by her desk, "Perry's outlined the situation, but I want to hear everything from you. From the beginning." Leighton and I looked at each other, and I started the story. About how I'd met Tess, about my first suspicions, about the documents I'd found in their house, about the phone call I'd overheard. Leighton occasionally inserted a clarification, but mostly remained silent, staring out the window with a detached expression. Brenda listened, taking notes, occasionally interrupting us with questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and tapped her pen thoughtfully on her notebook. "It's a tricky situation," she said at last. "You have suspicions, but little legally relevant evidence. The documents you photographed were obtained illegally, by breaking into someone else's home. An overheard conversation is also dubious evidence without a recording. So what do we do?" Leighton asked, desperation in his voice. "Wait for her to try to poison us like her previous men?" Brenda shook her head. "Of course we don't. We need to be proactive. Protect your assets and create a legal barrier between your estate and your wife, Mr. Bullock." "Just Leighton," my son corrected. "And how would you do that?" "One, you need to make a new will for your father. The second is to set up a trust to transfer the assets. 3, Leighton, you should draw up separate property documents to protect you in the event of a divorce." "And the house?" I asked. "I really want to sell it. It's too big for me alone, and I don't want Tess to have it." "Selling it is an option," Brenda agreed, "but you'll have to do it right so that the money is secure. I can suggest setting up a limited liability company through which the transaction will take place." We spent almost 3 hours in Brenda's office strategizing. She was pedantic and consistent, checking every detail and suggesting different scenarios. "The most important thing now," she said as we were finishing up, "is not to scare your sister-in-law away. Let her think everything is going according to her plan. Mr. Bullock—" "Oh, Yvonne," I corrected automatically. "Yvonne, keep pretending you're going to sign it over to Leighton. Leighton, you're to behave with your wife as usual. No confrontations, no accusations until we're ready." Leighton and I nodded. The plan was clear: protect our assets legally, prepare the house for sale, and find a safe place we could move to, far enough away from Renton to start a new life. "One last thing." Brenda looked at us with a serious look. "If you fear for your safety, consider going to the police. Yes, you have little evidence to charge you with fraud or attempted murder, but you can register your concerns." "The police won't believe us." Leighton shook his head. "Tess has an impeccable reputation." "Maybe," Brenda agreed, "but sometimes the mere fact of going to the police can be a defense. If something happens, they'll know where to look." On the way home, Leighton and I discussed the next steps. We decided to start with an inventory of valuables in the house: photos, family heirlooms, documents that should not fall into the hands of Tess. "I can't believe all this is happening," Leighton said, looking out the cab window. "Until a week ago, I thought I had a normal life, a loving wife." I put my hand on his shoulder, not knowing what to say. No words could ease the pain of betrayal. At home, we started in the attic. Old boxes of photo albums, Elizabeth's letters, Leighton's childhood drawings, family heirlooms, all needed to be sorted, packed, and moved to a safe place. We decided to rent a safety deposit box for the most valuable items. "Look at this." Leighton pulled a child's drawing out of the box. "Remember this? My first house project. I picked up the yellowed piece of paper. A crooked house with a huge chimney, smoke billowing from it, and three figures in front of it. The tall one with a hammer, obviously me. The smaller one with flowers in her hands, Elizabeth. And the smaller one, Leighton himself. Of course I remember. You said you were going to be the best architect in the world. And then you decided that construction was too dirty and dusty. He grinned. Everyone chooses his own path. I put the drawing in the box of things we decided to keep. The important thing is that it leads to happiness. Leighton stopped talking, and I realized I'd hit a sore spot. He was never really happy in his career, always seemed to be looking for something else. And in his personal life, too. First, the failed marriage to Helen, now this situation with Tess. You know, he said after a pause, maybe this is a chance to start over. Not just to get out of Renton, but to change something in my life. It's never too late, I replied. Look at me, 74 years old, and I'm starting over too. We worked all day, sorting things, packing boxes. Toward evening, we went down to the first floor for a break and a snack. And then the doorbell rang. I looked out the window and saw Tess, impeccably dressed with a smile on her face. Leighton and I looked at each other. I'll get it, he said. We have to act natural, remember? I nodded, feeling my heart start to beat faster. Leighton took a deep breath, like he was taking a dive, and went to open the door. Leighton! Tess's voice sounded surprised. What are you doing here? I thought you were working on a project. Hello to you too, he replied, trying to sound casual. I'm helping my father unpack. He's decided to sell the house, you know. Yeah, he called, Tess said, walking into the hallway. That's why I came over. I wanted to help with the paperwork, discuss the details. She saw me standing in the living room doorway and smiled. The same fake smile that now seemed poisonous. Ivan, how glad I am that you have finally made a sensible decision. This house is really too big for you alone. I forced myself to smile back, though it wasn't easy. Hello, Tess. Yes, Leighton has convinced me that it's time to move on. Leighton? She turned to her husband in surprise. I thought it was my credit. I've talked so many times about the benefits of moving. We both came to this decision, Leighton said quickly. Ada, Dad's not young anymore, and he needs something smaller, with no stairs and a smaller lot to take care of. Tess glanced around the hallway, noticing the boxes we hadn't had time to carry into the attic. Have you started packing already? So soon? The house isn't even on the market yet. We're just sorting through old stuff, I said. It's been accumulated over the years. Tess walked into the living room, looking around carefully. Her gaze lingered on Elizabeth's clock, which still stood on the mantelpiece. That clock? It's an antique, isn't it? She asked as if by accident. Yes, it belonged to Elizabeth's mother, I answered. It must be worth a fortune. Tess ran her finger along the woodwork. Are you going to sell them with the house? No, Leighton said firmly. The watch stays in the family. Ah, oui, of course, darling, Tess smiled. I was just asking. But you know, when you move, it's best to get rid of the extra stuff, especially if you and your father are planning something compact. We'll figure it out, his voice sounded strained. Tess looked at him with mild bewilderment, then shifted her gaze to me. Ivan, I brought some documents for you to sign. She pulled a folder out of her purse. A power of attorney for the transaction and the paperwork to update the will. A notary I know can be here tomorrow. Thanks, Tess. I took the folder without opening it. But Leighton and I had already consulted with a lawyer. She'll prepare all the necessary documents. A lawyer? Tess frowned. What lawyer? Brenda Everett, Leighton answered. A very competent specialist in property matters. But why? Tess raised her voice, then quickly pulled herself together and smiled. I just don't see why you should spend money when I can organize everything. I have connections, experience. We appreciate your help, I said, but we prefer to have an independent consultant. Tess stood in the middle of the living room, and I saw something cold, calculating flicker in her eyes. For a split second, the mask slipped away, revealing her true face, and it was frightening. Whatever you say, she said at last, her smile tightening again. But I still need to talk to your Brenda, to make sure everything is organized properly. I'll tell her, Leighton nodded. She'll get in touch with you. Leighton, Tess put her hand on his shoulder. You seem tense. Is something wrong? No, just tired. He pulled away, trying not to make it too obvious. A lot of work with those boxes. I understand, she turned to me. Even, have you thought about where you're going to move? I've found some great options for senior residences. I haven't decided yet, I answered evasively. Maybe I'll buy a small house in the country. In the country? She didn't hide her surprise. But at your age, it's better to be close to medical care, to people. I'm not that infirm yet. I tried to make it sound carefree. And I like nature. Tess was clearly unhappy with this turn, but she kept smiling. She spent another hour or so at our house, asking about the plans for the sale, about the things we were going to take with us, about when the new will would be ready. Leighton and I answered evasively, trying not to give specific information. Finally, she started to head home, but before she left, she asked Leighton to walk her to her car. I watched through the window as they talked. She explained something emotionally, often touching his arm. He stood with his arms crossed over his chest and nodded. When Leighton returned, his face was grim. What did she say? I asked. Asked why I hadn't been home the last few days, why I hadn't answered her texts. Said she missed me, that the house was empty without me. He ran a hand through his hair. And then suddenly she said she was worried about you, that you were behaving strangely and she was afraid you were getting dementia. Suggested we get you tested before it's too late. Dementia? I couldn't hide my outrage. That's her new plan? To declare me incompetent? It sounds like it. Leighton sank heavily onto the couch. She said it happens a lot at your age and that we should take care of your condition before we do any paperwork. And what did you say? That you were perfectly fine, that you and I spend a lot of time together, and I would have noticed any signs of dementia. She didn't look convinced. I sat down next to him, feeling fatigue pile up on my shoulders. She's not going to stop, Leighton. She's realized now that something's wrong, and she'll look for other ways. I know, he stared into the space in front of him, but I didn't expect her to go this far. Declaring you incompetent it's a logical step for her, I finished for him. If I'm incapacitated, I can't dispose of property. She'll have a guardian, and it'll probably be you, my only relative. And you're her husband. God, Leighton whispered. She'd thought of everything. Not everything. I put my hand on his shoulder. She didn't expect us to reveal her plan, and now we have to move faster than we planned. We called Brenda and told her about Tess's visit, about her hints about my incapacity. Brenda listened and said she would get right on the paperwork. She also suggested that I get a medical examination to document my legal capacity in case Tess did try to challenge my actions in court. We need to expedite the sale of the house, Leighton said when we were done talking to Brenda. Tess suspects something, and I'm afraid she might take more drastic action. I agree, I nodded. We'll start looking for a buyer tomorrow. No realtor, no ads. Maybe Perry knows someone who would be interested. What about my stuff in her house? Leighton asked. There are important documents, personal items left there. We'll pick them up when she's at work, I decided. But we have to be careful. After I broke into your house, she might have installed additional cameras or an alarm system. All evening, we planned our next steps. Leighton called work and took a 2-week leave of absence. For family reasons. I made a list of everything that needed to be done. Medical exams, new paperwork, finding a buyer for the house, organizing the move. Where are we going? Farham, Leighton asked when we were done discussing it. I wondered. I'd never left Renton for a long time in my entire life. It's where I grew up, where I met Elizabeth, where Leighton was born. But now this town, so familiar and native, seemed dangerous. My cousin Holt lives in Oregon, in a small town by the coast, I said. We haven't seen each other in years, but we keep in touch. Why don't we go there first? That sounds good, Leighton agreed, as long as Tess can't find us. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night. Everything that had happened seemed like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the woman who had come into our lives for the sole purpose of taking everything we had. About the woman who may have killed 2 men for money, about the woman who now knew we suspected something. I listened to the sounds of the house, to the ticking of Elizabeth's clock, to the creaking of the floorboards. This house that I had built with my own hands that was supposed to be a safe haven for my family now seemed vulnerable. I thought about the fact that tomorrow we would begin the process of separating from it, from everything that had been our life. And yet, despite the fear and anxiety, somewhere deep inside I felt relief. Leighton was finally seeing the truth. We were together again, father and son, ready to protect each other, just like we used to be, before our paths parted. In the morning, I was awakened by a phone call. It was Tess, her voice sounding concerned. "Ivan, I'd like to meet with you today. There are important matters regarding the sale of the house that we need to discuss." The next morning, there was a persistent knock on the door. I hadn't finished my morning coffee yet, and Leighton was up in the attic with another batch of boxes. I saw Tess through the window, her face a look of impatience and a folder in her hands. When I opened the door, I felt a wave of cold air, or maybe it was a premonition of the coming storm. "Ivan," she came in without waiting for an invitation. "We need to have a serious talk." "Where's Leighton?" "Upstairs," I answered, trying to stay calm. "Sorting out his things." "Leighton," she shouted, ignoring me. "Come down here, please." A moment later, my son came down the stairs. When he saw his wife, he froze halfway down, then came slowly toward us. His face was impenetrable, an expression he'd learned from me over the many years of poker nights together. "Tess, what's wrong?" he asked as if he didn't understand the reason for her visit. "What's wrong?" Her voice shook. "I just talked to Ashton Pierce. You know who that is? The realtor who appraised your house, Ivan, 6 months ago when I offered to move in. He said you contacted him yesterday. And you know what's interesting? You didn't mention me as a contact. You didn't say I had anything to do with this deal at all." Leighton threw a quick glance at me. "Yesterday, after her visit, we did contact several realtors hoping to expedite the sale of the house. But I had no idea that one of them was related to Tess." "Tess," I began conciliatorily, "this is just a misunderstanding. Leighton and I have been discussing various options." "A misunderstanding?" She raised her voice. "I don't believe you. You're up to something. Both of you." She tossed the folder onto the coffee table. The papers scattered, and I saw papers with a law firm logo on them. "What's this?" Leighton asked, stepping closer. "A power of attorney," Tess replied sharply. "It's in your name, Leighton, so you can represent your father in the sale of the house. I prepared it yesterday, thinking we were working together." She turned to me, and I saw the mask of benevolence finally slip from her face, revealing her true nature. "Matsumit, but I guess I was wrong. You're both hiding something from me." "What's going on, Ivan? You've decided to do without me? Afraid I'll get my cut?" "Tess," Leighton took a step toward her, "let's discuss this calmly. Dad just wants to control the sale of his house. That's his right." "His right?" She grinned. "What about my rights? I'm your wife. Everything that's yours is mine by law, including his inheritance. That's it." She finally said it out loud. Even Leighton, who might still have doubted my suspicions, now saw her true intentions. "Tess," I said, trying to stay calm, "my house is my property. Not Leighton's, and certainly not yours." "Not yours yet," she squinted. "But it will be soon. And if you think you can fool me, you're sorely mistaken. I have my methods." She pulled a cell phone out of her purse and showed us the screen. It was a recording. I recognized myself and Leighton sitting in Brenda Everett's office. The recording had no sound, but the image was clear. "I hired a private investigator," Tess said with triumph in her voice. "After your invasion of our home, Ivan, I decided I'd better be careful. And as you can see, I was right. You both went behind my back to a lawyer to deprive me of my rightful share." "Tess," Leighton's voice sounded tired, "we weren't trying to deceive anyone. We just wanted independent advice." "Don't lie to me," she almost shouted. "I'm not stupid. Your Brenda Everett specializes in asset protection in divorce and inheritance disputes. Why do you need such a lawyer if you don't plan to cheat me?" She came right up to Leighton, looking him in the eye. "What did he tell you about me? That I'm after his money? That I'm some kind of fraud? And you believed him over me? Your wife?" Leighton was silent, not averting his gaze. I could see him struggling with conflicting feelings. The love he felt for this woman, even if it was based on a lie, and the growing realization of her true nature. "Tess," he finally said, "I think we need to talk. alone. Oh, now you want to talk in private? She laughed, but there was no mirth in that laugh. Why didn't you want to talk in private when you were planning to sell your father's house behind my back and rob me of my share? Because you don't have any share, I interjected. Not in my house, not in my money. Shut up, old man. She turned to me, her eyes flashing with unconcealed anger. You've always been an obstacle. From the beginning, you've stood between me and Leighton, poisoning his mind with your paranoid ideas. Tess, Leighton grabbed her arm. Don't you dare talk to my father like that. She wrenched her arm away and backed away, looking at both of us with undisguised hatred. Well, I see you're conspiring against me. Very well, but be warned, I'm not going down without a fight. I have my trump cards. She pulled another document out of her purse and threw it on the table. You know what this is? A psychiatrist's report on Ivan Bullock's probable dementia. I've made an appointment for you, Ivan, next week. Dr. Harris is a good friend of mine. He'll confirm that you're incapacitated and unable to manage your own assets. You can't do that, Leighton objected. You have no right to make an appointment for my father to see a psychiatrist without his consent. Like a loving daughter-in-law concerned about his health? Yes, I can, she smiled. And the court will back me up, especially when it finds out that he's been breaking into people's homes, stalking me, expressing paranoid ideas that I'm after his money. She turned to me. And when you're declared incompetent, guess who becomes your guardian? That's right, your only relative, Leighton. And since he's my husband, I'll be in control of all decisions. You're wrong, I said calmly. I have the results of a full medical examination yesterday, a full competency report signed by 3 independent specialists. And one more thing. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and turned on the tape, the one of Tess in the cafe, saying to her companion, I'm going to get divorced soon, and I'm going to have it all. Her face paled. It doesn't prove anything, she said, but without the same confidence. It could be about anything. How about this? Leighton's an idiot, like his father. He believes I love him. Leighton listened with clenched teeth. His face was stony, but his eyes betrayed pain, the deep, sharp pain of betrayal. You taped me? Tess turned to me, but she was looking at Leighton. It's illegal. It's a violation. My privacy has been violated too, I interrupted, by your private detective, by your attempts to declare me incompetent, by your lies. Leighton, she turned to her husband, suddenly changing tactics. You can't believe this. It's a fake, a montage. Your father is obsessed with destroying our marriage. He's always hated me from the beginning. Sam? Tess, Leighton said quietly. I heard that tape yesterday, and the other tapes too. What other tapes? There was alarm in her voice. Your conversations with Hugo Drake, I answered. Your friend from the law firm with whom you were planning how to gain control of my house. It was a bluff. No other records we had. But she didn't know that. None of this is true. She backed toward the door. You're trying to smear me, to take away my legal rights. What rights, Tess? Leighton asked. The right to manipulate me? The right to lie about your past, about your job, about your feelings for me? I've never lied about my feelings. She tried to take his hand, but he pulled away. What about Roger Carmichael? And I asked. And Hubert Foster? Did you love them too before they died under strange circumstances, leaving you the money? Shut up, she shouted. You know nothing of my past. I know enough, I replied. I know your real name is Tessa Greenwood. I know you were married to Roger Carmichael, who died of a heart attack a year after the wedding. I know that before him was Hubert Foster, who also passed away, leaving you a decent sum. And I know that both showed the same symptoms before they died. Headaches, confusion, coordination problems. Tess stood in the middle of our living room, cornered by the accusations, her beautiful face contorted with rage. You can't prove anything, she hissed. No one would believe 2 paranoid men against an innocent woman. Maybe not, I agreed. But we know the truth, and you can't fool us again. Tess gave us a scornful look and headed for the door. She stopped on the threshold. This isn't over, she promised. I won't let you sell the house, and you, Leighton, will regret that choice. With that, she left, slamming the door loudly. Leighton and I were left in the silence of the living room. He looked devastated, as if all his strength had left him. I'm sorry, I said finally. I know how much it hurts. You were right about everything, he shook his head. All this time, she was just using me. We'll get through this. I put my hand on his shoulder. Together. That same night, we got a call from Perry. Tess had filed an injunction against the sale of the house, claiming I was incapacitated. We expected this and were already prepared. Brenda had gathered all the necessary paperwork, including medical reports and witness statements. The next few days were filled with legal battles. Tess brought in some serious lawyers who tried to block our every move. She even showed up at the bank with them when we tried to transfer money to a new account. But despite her best efforts, the court denied the request to declare me incompetent. The medical reports were irrefutable, and the judge, an elderly man about my age, seemed to realize immediately what was going on. When the court ruled in our favor, Tess tried to challenge it, but was unsuccessful. She also filed for divorce from Leighton, demanding half of all property, including the house, which she called a marital asset, but it was too late. By then, we had managed to contact my old friend Andrew Prescott, who had always admired my house. He agreed to buy it quickly and for cash, without too much publicity. The deal was finalized within 2 days, before Tess had time to make any new legal maneuvers. When she found out, her rage knew no bounds. She even came to us with threats, but Perry, an ex-cop, was with us and quickly escorted her out. Leighton, still recovering from the betrayal, looked at her at that moment with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You know what the saddest part is, Tess," he told her. "I really loved you, and you only saw me as a tool." "You'll be sorry," she hissed, but her threats already sounded hollow. We sold the house I'd lived in most of my life. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The last night before we left, Leighton and I sat in the backyard, looking at the old apple tree and reminiscing about the past. "You know," he said, looking up at the stars, "despite all this craziness, I'm glad we're back together, like we used to be." "Me too, son," I replied, feeling my eyes fill with tears. "Me too." Early in the morning, while Renton was still asleep, we loaded the last of the boxes into the rented van. Most of the furniture and large items we sold with the house or gave away to acquaintances. We took only the essentials with us: clothes, personal items, photo albums, Elizabeth's watch, and a few family heirlooms that couldn't be left behind. Andrew, who had bought our house, turned out to be an understanding man. Not only did he not object to us taking the built-in shelves that I had made myself, but he even insisted that we take the doorknobs that Elizabeth had once picked out. "There'll be a reminder of the old house in the new house," he said as he helped me unscrew the brass knobs from the doors. "It's important to stay connected to the past." I was grateful for his understanding. The house I'd built with my own hands, where I'd spent most of my life, now belonged to someone else. But through little things like these pens, a piece of it stayed with me. Leighton hardly spoke that morning. He was methodically packing, checking lists, calling the movers we'd hired to help with the loading. His face was focused and detached. I knew he was still reeling from Tess's betrayal, but I stayed out of the conversation. Everyone's healing speed was different. By 6 in the morning, everything was ready. The van was in front of the house, filled with boxes and a few pieces of furniture we'd decided to take with us. My old pickup truck, which I'd finally repaired, was loaded with my most prized possessions: documents, photos, family heirlooms. Leighton and I stood on the porch, looking around the house one last time. Dawn was just beginning, and the first rays of sunlight were painting the walls a pinkish color. "Ready?" I asked, putting my hand on my son's shoulder. "Yes," he nodded. "It's time." We turned to leave, and that's when a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Tess's dark blue sedan stopped, blocking the exit. She and a tall man in a suit got out, the same lawyer who had accompanied her to the notary's office. "Leighton," she shouted, heading toward us at a brisk pace. "Do you really think you can just leave? Drop everything and disappear?" I felt Leighton tense up. His hand, which held the keys to the van, clenched into a fist. "Tess," he said calmly, "we've talked about everything. I filed for divorce, and you have the papers. There's an offer to split the assets, which is more than generous under the circumstances." "Generous?" She laughed, but it sounded hysterical. "You leave me the house we lived in, and you think that's generous? What about the money from the sale of this house?" She waved her hand in the direction of our former dwelling. "What about the fact that I'm legally entitled to half of everything you own?" I have almost nothing, Tess, Leighton answered. The house was my father's and the money from the sale was his. I only get a small part of what he decided to give me. Lies! Her voice broke into a shriek. It's all planned to deprive me of my share, and I won't let it happen. A man in a suit stepped forward. Mr. Bullock Jr., he began in a formal tone. I represent Mrs. Bullock in the divorce proceedings. We have reason to believe that you are attempting to hide assets and avoid an equitable division of property. I've filed a motion to freeze all accounts and assets until they're fully inventoried. You can file whatever you want, I stepped forward, feeling my blood boil. But we're leaving tonight, and no amount of legal tricks will stop us. You don't understand, the lawyer shook his head. I have a temporary restraining order. He pulled a document from a folder and held it out to Leighton. You can't leave the state until the property division case is heard. Leighton took the paper and gave it a quick glance. It says here that I can't take the jointly acquired property out of the state without Tessa's consent or a court order, he said, handing the document back. But everything in here, he pointed to the van, is my father's personal belongings and my personal belongings that I brought with me into the marriage. None of it is jointly acquired. That has yet to be proven, the lawyer objected. Until then, Sekrona, listen, Leighton interrupted him, and I heard a note of steel in his voice that I hadn't noticed before. You can do your job, we don't mind. But we're leaving tonight. If you want to check the contents of the van, go ahead. We have an inventory of everything we're taking with the origin of each item. Tess, seeing that the legal route was failing, changed tactics. She stepped closer to Leighton, her face suddenly softer, her eyes filled with tears. Leighton, please, she said in a trembling voice. Don't do this. We can fix this. I know your father turned you against me, but we loved each other. Remember how good we were together. Leighton looked at her expressionlessly. Stop it, Tess. This isn't going to work. I heard your words on the tape. I know what you really think of me. The recording could have been tampered with, she said quickly. Your father could have hired anyone to edit it. He's always wanted to destroy our marriage, always hated me. Tess, that's enough, Leighton said firmly. I did my own investigation after I heard the tape. I checked everything my father said. About Roger Carmichael, about Hubert Foster, about your job that doesn't exist. It all checks out. She stepped back, a look of shock on her face. You, following me? No, Leighton shook his head. Just checking the facts. And you know what? Even without all that evidence, the way you've been acting these past weeks speaks for itself. Your greed, your threats, your attempts to incapacitate my father for money, these are not the actions of a loving wife. Tess looked at him, and I saw her expression change from feigned tenderness to pure, unadulterated rage. You're going to regret this, she hissed. Both of you will regret it. I'll destroy you in court, get every dime I can, and no amount of moving will save you. Do what you want, Leighton said calmly. But now get the car off the road. We're leaving. Tess didn't move. Her hateful eyes flicked from Leighton to me and back again. I'm not going to let you just drive away, she said. Not after everything I've put into this marriage. What have you put into it? Leighton grinned bitterly. Lies, manipulation, plans to get our money? I was your wife, she screamed. I cooked, I cleaned, I slept with you. I deserve compensation. And you will, Leighton said calmly, as soon as the court determines a fair share. Now please step away from the car. I saw her hesitate, something dangerous flickering in her eyes. For a moment I thought she would do anything to stop us, but then the lawyer put his hand on her shoulder and whispered something in her ear. She gave him an angry look, but nodded and stepped back. This isn't over, she said, looking at both of us. Sort, I will find you wherever you are, and I will take what is rightfully mine. Nothing belongs to you, I replied calmly. It never has. Good luck in court. We got into the cars, Leighton driving the van, me driving the pickup. Tess and her lawyer watched us standing in the driveway. When we pulled into the driveway, she made no attempt to stop us physically, but her look promised that this wouldn't be the last time we'd see each other. We drove out of Renton in the early morning as the city was just beginning to wake up. As we drove past familiar streets, past places where my entire life had passed, I had a strange feeling, a mixture of regret, sadness, and, unexpectedly, relief. We were driving north toward Oregon, where my cousin Holt lived. I hadn't seen him in about 10 years, but we kept in touch. When I called him and explained the situation, without too many details, just saying we needed a place to stay for a while, he immediately offered his guest house. "It's empty most of the year anyway," Holt said, "and you can rest and decide what to do next." We drove in silence for the first hour. Leighton drove the van ahead. I followed in the pickup. As we crossed the state line, I felt the tension that had been stiffening my shoulders begin to let go. By mid-afternoon, we stopped for a bite to eat at a roadside cafe. Sitting at a table by the window, watching the cars go by, I was finally able to exhale. "How are you?" I asked Leighton, who was staring thoughtfully into his coffee. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Everything happened so fast. Just a month ago, I had a normal life, a job, a wife, a house, and now I'm a 40-year-old man fleeing his hometown with his father, pursued by his ex-wife." "We're not running away," I countered. "We're starting over. That's different." He smiled weakly. "I hope you're right." We continued on our way after lunch. The road curved between the hills, gradually bringing us closer to the Oregon coast, where the town of Astoria was located, a new home for both of us, if only for a while. Holt met us at his house, a large wooden, white-painted house overlooking the ocean. He hadn't changed much in the years we hadn't seen him, still as sturdy as ever, with a gray beard and clear eyes like mine. "Ivan!" He gave me a big, manly hug. "It's good to see you, you stubborn old fellow." "You too, Holt." I patted him on the back. "Thanks for taking us in." "It's nothing," he said. "Family's family. And this must be Leighton?" He held out his hand to my son, who stepped out of the van, looking tired after the long drive. "Yes." Leighton shook Holt's hand. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Bullock." "Just Holt," he laughed. Mr. Bullock is your father, always serious and correct. I've always been the family tomboy." I smiled, remembering our youth, when Holt had really been a bully, and I had been the straight guy who always followed the rules. The guest house Holt offered us was a cozy two-story structure at the end of his lot. There was a living room and kitchen downstairs and 2 bedrooms and a bath upstairs. The veranda overlooked the ocean, and the beach was only a 5-minute walk. "Make yourselves comfortable," Holt said, handing us the keys. "The fridge is stocked, and the wood for the fireplace is in the shed. I'm around if you need anything." Leighton and I started unloading the cars, organizing the few things we'd brought with us. It took the rest of the day, and by evening, sitting on the veranda with a cup of hot tea, watching the sun set over the ocean, I felt a strange calmness. "You know," I said to Leighton, who was sitting next to me, "I never thought I'd be starting a new life at 74. And I never thought I'd be divorced and without a permanent home at 40. He smiled weakly. "Life is full of surprises. Not always pleasant ones," I said. "Yes," he agreed. "But maybe sometimes we need even unpleasant surprises to shake ourselves up, to see things we hadn't noticed before." I looked at him in surprise. I hadn't expected such a philosophical thought from a son who had always been more of a practitioner than a dreamer. "And what did you see?" I asked. He was silent for a long time, looking at the horizon where the sun was slowly sinking into the ocean. "Swore, I saw that I had been living someone else's expectations for too long," he said at last. "First yours. You wanted me to be a builder like you. Then Helen, she wanted me to earn more money, to have a prestigious job. Then Tess, she wanted, well, we know what she wanted." He turned to me and I saw something new in his eyes, a determination I hadn't noticed before. "It's time to start living my own life," he said. "Tronan, to do what I want, not what other people expect me to do." "What do you want?" I asked, feeling my son's pride swell in my chest. "I don't know yet," he said honestly, "but I'm going to find out." That evening, we sat on the veranda for a long time, talking about everything and nothing in particular. For the first time in years, I felt that Leighton and I were really talking as father and son, not as two strangers bound only by blood. The next few days were spent settling into our new home. We bought the necessary furniture, dishes, and appliances. Leighton found a job at a local data analysis company, a temporary remote position, but it was a start. A week after we arrived, Brenda called with news about Tess. Turns out she had filed several lawsuits, property division, personal injury, even fraud charges against me. But thanks to Brenda's foresight and the documents we had time to prepare, most of the lawsuits were dismissed by the court. The only remaining issue was the division of the jointly acquired property, but even here Tess's position was weak. Leighton had almost no property except his car and personal belongings. She won't settle, Brenda warned. People like that never admit defeat. Be careful. We took her advice to heart. We kept our whereabouts low profile, communicated with lawyers only through secure channels. Watched for suspicious cars in the neighborhood. Maybe it was paranoia, but after everything we'd learned about Tess, it was better to be safe. Little by little, life was getting better. Holt introduced us to the locals and we became part of a small but friendly community. I even started helping with small construction jobs, not for money, but to keep my hands and mind busy. One evening, about a month after we moved in, Leighton and I were sitting by the fireplace. Outside the window, the first storm of fall was raging, the wind bending the trees, the rain drumming on the roof, the ocean roaring in the distance. "Dad," Leighton said suddenly, looking at the fire. "Thank you." "For what?" I wondered. "For not giving up. For fighting for me even when I didn't believe you. For seeing the truth when I was blind." I looked at my son, a grown man who had been through betrayal and pain, but didn't break, and I felt my heart fill with pride. "You are my son," I said simply. "I will always fight for you." We were silent, listening to the crackling of the fire and the sound of the rain. "You know," I said at last, "I've thought about a lot of things during this time. About family, about betrayal, about what's really important in life." "And what conclusions have you come to?" Leighton asked. I thought, staring at the flames dancing in the fireplace, that family isn't always those who are related to you by blood or marriage. Family is those who stick around when the going gets tough. Those who see the real you and accept you for who you are. Leighton nodded, and I saw understanding in his eyes. "Elizabeth always knew that," I continued. "She didn't create a family out of obligation, but out of love and caring. And I'm only now beginning to realize how much wiser she was than I was." "Mom was special," Leighton agreed. "She'd be proud of you now, the way you protected our family." Those words touched me to the core. I'd always thought I'd failed Elizabeth by failing to keep the family together after she died. But maybe now, through all the trials, Leighton and I had finally found our way back to each other. "We'll get through this," I said, looking at my son. "No matter what happens, we'll get through this together." "Yes," he smiled. And in that smile, I saw a reflection of Elizabeth's smile. Together. The storm continued to rage outside the window, but inside our little house it was warm and peaceful. I knew that Tess would still make her presence known, that there were more challenges ahead, that starting a new life at 74 was a challenge not everyone was ready to take on. But I also knew that I was no longer alone, that I had my son by my side, who finally saw me not as a strict, demanding father, but as someone who loved him and would do anything for his well-being. And in this knowledge was the strength that would be enough to overcome any obstacles that would still come our way.